bless you and welcome to Growing in Grace. We're glad that you have joined us, and we'd like for you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And we're glad that you are here with us, and call and let your friends and your foes and whosoever will let them know about this podcast. We're glad that you have joined us, and we appreciate your comments and all of the interest in this particular podcast. And today, we're grateful to have our friend Lorrie Jackson here with us today. And today we're going to get into a conversation pertaining to single parenting from a mother's perspective.
Yes.
And we recognize that we oftentimes are dealing with building families and working with bringing up families and the nuclear family, but we understand that it's not always nuclear.
No.
And there are different reasons for that. It doesn't matter about the reasons for it. There are challenges and things that have to be overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just want to have a conversation about single parenting. And I will even say you were or are a single parent, and I'm a product of a single parent, a single parent mother. There are single parent fathers.
Yes.
Probably, I don't know, maybe in the minority. Maybe it's more mothers who single parent than fathers. I don't know the statistics on that. I haven't done the research on that. But I am the product of a mother, single parent mother, and you are a single parent mother.
Yes.
So I think we can have a good conversation about this from different perspectives.
Yes. Yes.
So what would you like to share with us? How would you like to begin our conversation?
It wasn't easy. It wasn't by choice. And I had a village that really helped me with raising my children. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know where we would be. We were benefited a lot, especially the saints in the true church. They were my village, along with my family, but more so the saints in the true church were my true village.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oftentimes when around what age did you begin to have your children?
First year of college.
First year of college.
First year of college, I got pregnant with my daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was with her father at the time. Actually, I was with the father of both of my children. After I got pregnant with my son, the second child, that's when their father and we separated. We were never married, but I feel that he served his purpose in my life because he brought me to the true church,
Yes.
which was a blessing for me. But yeah, the first year of college, I got pregnant with my daughter, and then probably second year of college, I got pregnant with my son. Yeah, seems so long ago, but
So it's kind of started off a little rough in college, huh?
yeah. Yeah.
But you finished.
Yes.
You finished.
Yes.
But you started out with two children. So what was that like to have children while going to school?
Well, I didn't go the entire way. Of course, there was some pauses there because I had to get a job, had to provide for my children, but I was blessed enough to be able to go back to school.
Yes.
Whenever I wanted to go back to school, I was able to go back to school. And that's a blessing in itself, because most single parenting, you're so busy trying to provide to make ends meet. You don't get to do what you need to do to help further your family alone. But early on, it was on me to provide for my family. I really couldn't count on him.
Yes.
Not really. I could count on his family, but I couldn't count on him.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Different people's journeys are different, and even with you saying that he helped you to, the father of your children helped you to come and discover the truth. And the reality of it is the way that it happened is kind of unorthodox, but it got you to the result.
Yes.
And got you to where you needed to be.
Yes.
And with your children, and you being a single parent and having to raise them, what were some of the challenges that you faced early on?
Well, there's always
Because in the first year of college, which was about 19, 20.
Yes. Yes.
And so early on, you're a single parent. and you're 19, 20.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like for you? Did you know how to be a mom?
No, no. Grandparents helped out a lot. I wasn't even driving then.
Oh my goodness.
No, because I did not get my license, I think, until I was 19, and had no other choice. I was so used to being chauffeured around. Not that I didn't want to get my license, but my parents didn't want to teach me how to drive. So I did rely on my father's children. His family were the ones that actually his sisters taught me how to drive and helped me get my license, because that's what I needed if I was going to be able to work and provide for my daughter. But yeah, that's the funny part. But early on, surprisingly, no, I did not know how to be a mother. I did rely on grandparents to help with caring for a newborn, but they helped out a lot. When they were smaller, I could always count on Mother Jackson. The matriarch of the Jackson family, she loved her grandchildren. She would keep her grandchildren. So early on, it was sort of easy for me as far as single parenting. But the older the children got and Mother Jackson passed away, and not taken from my mom, but my mom would tell you up front she's not too keen on watching grandchildren. But once Mother Jackson passed away, then it was on me to have to find someone to watch the children while I go to work, help someone find someone to watch the children while I went to school. So it did become a little bit harder for me to do what I needed to do. But my mother did help out with that. She would watch them when I went to school and things like that. But the older the children got, the harder it was, because they needed more. They got older, they needed clothes because they were growing. They needed food. It was a little bit challenging. I will admit that it was more challenging the older that they became.
Well, let me ask you. Sometimes it appears that, especially as a single mother, you begin to try to take on both roles. And you had a son and a daughter.
Yes.
Your oldest was your daughter.
Yes.
And of course you had your son. So with that, how did you have to make some adjustments as you were trying to do it as a single parent? Or did you have to make some adjustments in your thinking?
I did.
Whereas you're not just recognizing that maybe you're not just solely mom. Maybe you have to do some fatherly type things.
It was a struggle with them. They have different personalities. A lot of times I would get their father involved with watching them, and at that time their father was married and had stepchildren, so I would have to bring them to him. It wasn't a problem for my daughter because he had both stepdaughters, stepsons. It wasn't a problem for my daughter because she got along well with the daughters at one point, but it was a struggle for my son with sometimes going over to his father's house. And I didn't know that until later on. And then as they got older and were adults, I found out there were some issues also with my daughter having to go over there because it wasn't a great experience for them. But I was trying to survive. I was trying to work so that I could provide for my children. But then having conversations with them later on, it wasn't the best environment for them. And I hate that. That's something that I have to live with because it did hurt them. It changed some factors of what they got involved with when they became teenagers and affected them when they were adults. So as a single parent, you do tend to make some mistakes. But at the time that you're living it, you don't realize that there are mistakes.
Right.
So I try not to think about stuff like that because I don't like to cry about it. But yeah.
I understand. Basically, you're trying to do the best you know how to do at the time.
Yeah.
And you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And in survival mode, there's things you're going to miss. Some of the details and you're going to miss some of that.
Yeah.
And I remember myself growing up with my mom. There were some things that there's some limitations as to what one person can do. And we would get together after I became an adult, and after I became an adult, my mother and I, we became friends. And, because when I was a kid, we weren't too friendly.
Yeah.
She was the disciplinarian and all of that. So, kids don't like that too good.
Yeah.
But after I became an adult, we became friends. And so we would go to lunch, and that's what we would talk about. She would want to talk about, well, how did I do? And, and she was trying to examine herself, which at the time, you can talk about it, but there's nothing you can go back and change. If you understand what I'm saying. And so we can talk about the past, but we can't go back and fix the past. Only thing I know that we can do now is maybe make things better for generations that are coming along now, and people who are parents now, even single parents. Okay, so if you're a single parent today, because while we teach and while we hope that we would develop all these nuclear families, mom and dad, raising the children together, it doesn't always happen that way, for one reason or another. Sometimes you have the death of a father, the death of a mother. Of course, we have the fornication scenario, but there are different reasons why somebody is a single parent. And it doesn't matter about the reason why you're a single parent. You need to be the best parent you can be.
Yes.
For those children who, however they came, are not a mistake. They are not a mistake. The children are valuable and should be valued, and they should have the best parenting that they could possibly receive.
Yes.
You agree with that?
I do. My children helped me to grow. I could say that they helped me to become the woman that I am now. And my daughter's my best friend. We have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with my son. He's always said, Mom, if anything ever happened to you, you can come live with me. I'll take care of you. So I think I did pretty good with raising them. I mean, they both are God-fearing. They are living pretty good lives, I believe. But yeah, my daughter is my best friend.
Yes. Well, that's good. That's good. Now, help. When it came down to, I'll ask you about your son. When it came down to your son, you're a mom. You're not a dad. How was that for you to raise your son, to be a man? What help did you receive in that?
Well, first, early on, I tried to get him into the little activities like Boy Scouts. He hated that. Got him involved in school sports, which he always loved that. But definitely tried to get him around the brothers in the church. There was a time where I would send him with Elder Robinson to Cochran on Sundays. And then when that he didn't want to do that no longer, he would go with you. I called you up and you would take him with you and your wife at the time. I think y'all were newly married or even had little ones, I believe. But he would go with you to Chattanooga with and be around you. And I wanted to get him around strong men, and I appreciate that. And he remembers that, going to church with you, getting him there. And also the camps. I would have both children around mother and camp and elder camp. They were very instrumental with helping me with raising both the children. But as far as the importance for me was getting my son around some godly men that could help steer him the way he needed to go. That was very important for me, because I couldn't teach him how to be a man. I'm not a man. I mean, my dad was there for me, but I'm a girl. I mean, but yeah, that was important.
Right, and I say that because my mother, she did the best she could, but I also appreciate that she did get help, and there was men that were strong and upright in my life, that I was able to see an example of manhood. And so if a person is a single parent and you have sons, a single mother and you have sons, I would say that it's a good thought to know or to recognize that you are actually a female and your son is a male who actually needs male influence.
Yes.
And there are some things that a female may not be able to transfer over to a male. And I really appreciate, my mother helping me to have those positive male influences. I had good grandparents on both sides. My grandfather on both sides, they were excellent. And then I had an excellent pastor. Bishop Lucas he actually became my friend as a teenager. I started hanging out with him, and I learned some things from him that just by being around him. And I say that to say that children, they actually need to experience some things rather than, sometimes people will lecture their children, just talk to them, just tell them. And actually sometimes they need to be in an environment where they're experiencing things that they're being taught through experience, rather than being lectured to.
Yes.
They're catching some things by their environment. And the reality of that is that they're going to catch things from their environment no matter what.
Yes.
So if you put them in a bad environment, they're going to catch things from that.
Yes.
But you put them in a good one, they'll catch things from that too. And so that's a good positive thing. Now, another thing is your daughter.
Yes.
So your son, you got him around some positive male influence. Before I move to your daughter, I will ask this. What about the fact that he was a man he was growing to be a man, and did you try to baby him too much as a man, or as a boy child, as he's going to be a man? Or did you try to one of the things I think that's happening now, especially with single moms, moms sometimes try to baby or all their children, the boys and the girls. But now, when the dad sees that, at times the dad may say, "No, don't treat that boy like that. He's a boy," and he tries to distinguish how you treat the boy versus how you treat the girl. How did you deal with that? Did you try to baby him? Oh, don't put that on Brent, or how was you do it? Or did you recognize he actually needed to be treated different from Brittany, your daughter?
I wouldn't say I babied him too much. The mistake I made was getting him out of trouble all the time. Whatever he was into,
to suffer his consequences like he should have.
Yes, that was definitely a mistake, and also not allowing them to do more around the house. I remember when I bought my house, I told my children, "Y'all are not gonna cut my grass and mess my grass up." Where's mistake? Where's mistake? Because both of them should have been out there cutting the grass, emptying trash, the whole shebang. But I would not allow them to do that. And in hindsight, I don't know why. Because I always thought that they weren't going to do it as well as I can.
I see.
And that was not to their benefit.
I see.
Because they never learned from the mistakes of not being able to cut the grass properly or clean the house properly. Yeah, bad mistake.
And sometimes people make that error, and sometimes people think, or parents will think that, okay, well, I don't want my children to experience what I did, or I don't want them to have the pressures or the work, or, well, sometimes the work help you to develop, and sometimes by allowing the children to make the mistakes with the dishes and with the chores, and they don't do it like you, but you train them to do it like you, so that when the time comes, they know how to do it. Number one, and then number two is they begin to have a little pressure that develops them. But when they don't have the proper pressure, then they may not develop as well as they should. And there might be some things that's missing.
Yes.
I'll put it like that.
Yes.
And so you wish you had done that a little different.
I do, and definitely with getting my son, when he would get into trouble, getting him out. And probably about 8 years ago, he said, "Mom, you can't do that anymore. Quit trying to get me in trouble."
You still trying to get him out?
Parent never learned, but because I want better for them.
So he had to tell you.
Yeah.
Mom, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You was trying to solve the problem. for your man child.
Exactly.
He was a man at the time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So now I'm able to tell him when he does come to me, I'll just listen and advise.
Yeah.
But I'm not billing you out.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can't financially help you. No, you set yourself up, and he's a good child. He is actually. He's a good man. He works. He's got good work ethics.
Yes.
And hopefully he saw that in me. But I don't know if it's just the culture or what, but we're not very good with our money. And sometimes we don't pass that along to our kids of how to invest and how to spend wisely. So that he's learning that. He knows that now. I'm always talking to him about saving money. Save your money, save your money. And now, as of a couple of years ago, he helps me out. He'll give me money. Like, oh, thank you. And, you know, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. So now, your daughter, now you all are best friends. Were you always best friends? Or great friends like you are today?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. So what? How did you grow that relationship with your daughter?
I think she had to become a mother.
Oh, I think I see. So she didn't understand you until she became a mother.
Yeah, because she did always feel that I babied her brother more. I allowed him to get away with stuff more. And she would fuss at me all the time. But yeah, I think once she became a mother, I think she understood. Yeah.
It's a difference when sometimes people who are not parents, they on the outside looking in, they're thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. But when you get a child, you begin to understand. You know, you value that child. You don't want harm to come to the child, and you're going to do what you can to protect. And it's just different. It's just different. And not only that, you will discipline out of love. You know, because sometimes you think, well, this is my child. I don't want any harm, so I'm not going to even discipline. You might think that, but when you get a child, you begin to recognize, if I don't, what would the future of that child be like without discipline? You know. So how were you about discipline?
I disciplined my children in church. The funny thing is, I had this habit of, in church especially, I would snap my finger to get their attention, and they knew I meant business. So if they were doing something that they shouldn't have been, whether it was talking or moving too much or whatever, all I do is snap my finger, and they would straighten up. They look back at me, and I give them a look. But I didn't have that many problems with them early on when they were children growing up. I didn't have to whoop them a lot at all. They were pretty good kids. It's just that when they got a little older, and I don't know if it was a retaliation of me passing them off to their father or whatnot, but it was more so the son than the daughter. My daughter was a pretty good child, but my son, I think he retaliated a little bit more because I would pass them on. But I would just need a break as a single parent, and I'd get tired of fussing. So, and I wanted to give grandma a break, or she had passed on, and definitely my mom, she was busy living her best life, because she didn't have children around. So I would pass on the responsibility to their father, and because I needed a break, and I think that did something to my son. Yeah, most definitely. But he's fine now, from what I can tell. But yeah, I just needed a break. You need a break as a single parent.
Oh well, yeah. You
really do. But yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Let me ask you a question about the fussing. How about that fussing? Do you feel like that was effective, or so now we're in hindsight now?
Yeah.
Do you think that there was a better way than the fussing? I understand that you have to be firm, and there may be a time where you're going to have an elevated voice and an elevated tone and a seriousness about it. What you're trying to get over to your children. I just want to ask, you said all the fussing, and I know sometimes there could be a lot of that. Do you think you did that too much, or would you modify?
I would definitely modify, and I'm still going through it because I'm raising my grandson.
Oh.
Fussing doesn't work. So it's more so you need to if you're heated up. And usually I'm heated up. It's to step away, calm down, and approach it a little bit better. Talk. Find myself talking, and then if that don't work, I do fuss. But it was my daughter that and my son too. They both had to tell me stop fussing because it's going in one ear and out the other. Learn to talk, slow down, not be heated up. Because I'm very emotional. I'm very emotional. But to just slow down and get your words, get your thoughts together, make sure that you. And my son definitely had to tell me this about my grandson because they both are alike. But to watch what you say. Because it affects a child a certain way, the way you say it. And I'm real bad about talking hard. And I mean well, but I just talk hard. And sometimes people don't know how to take that. And with my children and my grandson, they just they totally ignore what I say. It goes in one ear and out the other. So, yeah, it's better not to fuss and to speak clearly and say the right words where you're not offending. Yeah, most definitely.
I agree with that. I know we had a little situation one time. My mother was a fusser too, and at one, I think she tried to get better, as time went on. And do you think that being a single parent and dealing with the stresses all by yourself kind of makes it easier to go into that fussing mode to release get some of that pressure off?
Probably so, yeah.
I think that's some of what that is that you're just frustrated.
Yeah, yes.
And so just that little extra pressure, you're just trying to get some of that steam out.
Yes, because you can't fuss on the job. Not really. You can't fuss at the bills that you have to pay. And so I get it.
But them kids, they can get it. Huh?
Yes.
They can fuss at them.
And they can't leave. They're stuck there.
Yeah. So, but I know even with my wife one time though, we were having an issue with washing the dishes, with the kids washing the dishes. Like you was just saying, how they don't do it right. Okay, but so she just kept fussing about it. Just cause and eventually I said to my wife, I said, okay, I tell you what, let's do this. Stop fussing about these dishes. Train them how to do it. Just keep showing them how to do it. And if they don't do it right, show them again. But sometimes in raising children, and I say sometimes, but really in raising children, you have to have some patience. And I'm not saying there's not a time for elevated or consequences or escalation. But I think it's bad to go to escalations first. Because if you go from zero to escalation all the time, then you do get to the point to where, okay, mom's fussing again. And it doesn't mean as much when you do that most of the times. Or if it's very frequent, it doesn't have the effect that it could have if you did it infrequently. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Yeah, so and then I will interject this. The Bible does say that what does your arguing reprove? How forcible are right words? I think that's Job 6:25. And so sometimes the arguing and the fussing, is not as effective as right words. And so finding those right words is very important, especially as a single mom or single parent, because you actually need efficiency, because words that are wasted, see, now you got to say it again over and over and over and over again, when if you had said it right, fewer times, you would have got the better result sooner than later.
I agree.
So you started out young, started out early, and you were not finished with your goals when you started having your children.
No.
And which is one of the things we try to tell young people now is, get yourself together, get your education, and get yourself prepared to live before you start having your children. You started with the children and were not finished with your education.
No.
So, what did that look like for you to finish your education with your children?
It wasn't easy. I would go to school during the day, work at night. Leaving teenagers at home by themselves. They got to do a lot of crap, a lot of mess. But it wasn't easy. But I thought I was doing it to benefit them. One of the reasons I was fine being started out as a medical assistant. Got pregnant with my daughter. That was just a 6-month course, so I finished that up. Went to work in a doctor's office. But if I was going to provide for my family and have our own place where I wasn't living with my mother, I needed to go back to school. So I did. I went back to school, got my LPN, and was working at a good job. Still, I hate saying this, but it's not really a robbing Peter to pay Paul, but it was always a struggle because you still had to provide for them, had to make sure that there was a roof over your head, making sure utilities were on, and still working and making sure that they had a good school environment and that they were doing what they needed to as far as making passing grades. What made me decide to go back to school to become an RN was my daughter, because she was in her senior year and stressing about how am I going to pay for college? What am I going to do? And I decided at that point I needed to go back to school to get my RN. Hindsight, I wish I had waited because my daughter was smart. She got scholarships. She was fine. But at the time, though, wanting to go back and going back, and like I said, going to school during the day and working at night, having teenagers at home by themselves was not conducive at all. They got in button heads all the time. I'm coming home from work, getting phone calls from the neighbors that the police have been called and yada, yada, yada. It's like, oh my God. In hindsight, I would not have done that. I would have stayed at home with my kids as far as not going back to school, and would have, I don't want to say be a better parent, but teenagers, they need you more. They need that guidance more. Because there's too much that they can get into. They have peers that they connect to, and those peers aren't being raised in the church. I'm raising mine in the church. So if I'm not there, they get into stuff, which mine did. And in hindsight, I would not have done that. I'm glad I did become an RN because it was beneficial, not just for myself, but with my children, because I was able to help them financially. But being a single parent, I should have been there to help guide and raise my teenagers. That's the regret that I do have. It was not easy having them in that type of environment when I should have been at home.
Well, I tell you, as a single parent, it's rough to be there all the time. And I know that my brother and I and my sisters, we had some rough times by ourselves. In fact, at times we almost killed each other. I mean,
I think my kids did too.
We had some really tough times. We had some fights that nobody was there to break up, and so that can be a pretty rough dynamic when the children are at home without a guide. Now that's just the truth. That's just the truth, and they say the truth is the light.
Yes.
And so even after, like you said, after we got older, that's when we got into some of those rough fights. And I'll just share a story that we had. My siblings and I, one time we had some neighbors that were coming over to the house, and so during the summer, we had kind of a little age on us, but my mom had to go to work, and so we were at home during the daytime, and some of our neighbors, they came over to our yard because we had a pear tree, and so they were getting our pears, and we saw them in our tree getting our pears, and so we looked out there and said, they stealing our pears. So we had in the house we had some medieval weapons on the wall. They were really not weapons. They were like decoration. But so we went to our medieval weapons on the wall and pulled our sword down, and then we had this ball and chain. And so my brother and I, we went outside to defend the house. Like, y'all get out of our yard. And so we were trying to defend the house, and so they started throwing bricks at us, and they threw a brick and busted one out, hit my brother in the chest, and knocked the wind out of him. And we called our mom and said, "Hey, they trying to steal our pears," and told her somebody knocked one of the windows out. She said, "Y'all get yourself back in the house." And so we just had several times like that. One more I share. We would now this is on us, but we had these bikes, and we'd ask our mom before she went to work. We said, "Mama," I don't even know why we asked, but we said, "Mama, can we go into town on our bikes?" And she'd say, "No, y'all better stay in this house." She leave, she go to work. We pull our little bikes down out the attic. We just go trucking into town, and we got into some things like that. But I do understand that children are going to do silly things.
Yeah.
And when there's no guide there, who's to stop them?
Yes.
Who's to stop them? So I just wanted to share some of those stories. But if you could, you say you would have tried to be there more.
Yes.
And I think that's a big thing with parents. Even myself, being a father to my children, I have a regret myself in that I was working a lot myself, and there were some things I would like to have done more with my children and spent more time with them, doing fun things.
Yes.
I wasn't an absentee father, but I was working a lot. And then sometimes you come home after working 2 jobs and all the other stuff you do, and then when you sit down, you just go to sleep.
Yes.
And so that wasn't good. And so I have a regret in that regard. And I say that to align myself with you in that as parents, single or otherwise, and even in a nuclear setting, you look back and you think and you reflect.
Yes.
And you would like to make some changes.
Yes.
And but the podcast today is really to help some that might be single parents today and maybe struggling a little bit with that, and may need to take something away from this conversation so that they could have fewer regrets. See, like you and I, we can't go back. Our children are adults now. Now we're grandparents, and so now we know how to be parents. Yeah. we were practicing with the kids. Sorry, kids. We was practicing on y'all.
Yes.
We was practicing on us. See, now if I have some more kids now, I know better about some things. You understand? But the thing I would say about that is, for the young people coming along now, you're a single parent now, and you got little kids. Pay attention to this conversation.
Yes.
There may be some things that you can do going forward, because after you've done it, you can't go back in reverse.
Correct.
But you can go forward with this information.
Yes.
And what do you think?
I think that's true. If you can, it's important to have a village that you can count on, that are going to be beneficial. My children's grandmother was wonderful. She was in the church. She had her values. They loved her. And then when she passed away, that was a hole for them. But then we had other people in the village, my church people, Elder Robinson, Mother and Elder Camps,
yes.
Great village. It's also important that sometimes kids, they don't, what you think they need from you is like me, trying to get a better job, better education. They didn't need that from me. They needed me there. My goal was to provide better for them, to have things for them. That's not what they needed. They needed me there. If you can be there, children are happy with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I remember me growing up, we had Spam sandwiches. We were fine with that. But I didn't want them to have what I had growing up. I wanted them to have better. But I think the simple stuff would have been sufficient for them as long as I was there more. I think that probably would have, and my daughter will tell me, you did the best you could. You were a great mother. But I don't see that. But it's wonderful to hear it from my daughter. It's wonderful to hear it from my son. But I just think that if I was more involved, it would have been, some of the things that they had to go through, they wouldn't have had to go through growing up if I was there. So yeah, as a single parent, I get it. The struggle is real as a single parent. I'm a single grandparent. And the struggle is real, but I still have that village. But I'm learning from my mistakes that there's more that I need to do for my grandson, because I'm making the same mistakes I did with my children with him. I fuss. I've got to talk more. I've got to make him do things more around the house. So yeah, get your children more involved. Teach them more. It's not that important for them to have things. My granddaughter, you can buy her toys, and then it's like she plays with it for a few minutes, and then she's on to something that really doesn't make sense, that she just catches her attention and she'll play with. So things that you think that are important, that you would think is important to them, it's not important to them. Yeah.
It's funny how sometimes you'll go to work and work overtime to buy your child this exotic toy, and then they get excited about the box. That the box that the toy came in, and they play with the box more than the toy. They're like, why did I buy that? I could have just brought the box. And you've been always spend all that time and money and energy trying to get that thing, like that thing was going to do the job. And sometimes, like you're saying, and it's true, just you being there to take up time with them, to laugh with them, to play with them, that's going to be more valuable than any other thing that you could buy.
Exactly.
And it's very important and vital to raise and to train them in the way that they should go, and the spiritual aspect of training the children. How do you feel about that role? Because I see now that a lot of single parents, they're not raising their children in God. The church is not. They don't go to church. The parents don't go to church. Single parents don't go to church, and the children don't go. And I believe that that's where a lot of the statistics are coming in at, where you're having, the murder and a lot of the violence and jail and recidivism to juvenile and jail. Where's the spiritual component in raising children? Whether you are single or have a nuclear family, how do you feel about the value of having God as a part of you raising your children?
That's the most important thing. I wouldn't be where I am today. I don't think my children would be where they are if it wasn't for the church and wasn't for God. And I can't imagine my life without him. He has blessed tremendously. When I think of all the things that happened or could have happened, I had favor. Things just, and I know that the struggle was there, but it was not bad. And I think that's because I had favor. I don't know what else to say. God has been good to me.
So
he really has, and I didn't deserve it. At all.
So you're a single mother, but you feel like you didn't do it by yourself.
No.
You feel like God was there helping you, protecting you, and even from some of your errors, he helped you through those. And didn't let it hurt you the worst. Where it could have been worse. He kind of softened the blow.
And he's still doing it. yeah, because I have peace.
Mm-hmm.
Even with all of that, with raising the children, I think there was still peace in the struggle. I really do. Yeah, there was peace in the struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say this too about my mother. I do appreciate her having God in her life and helping us and instilling God into us, or just being a good example of being spiritual and faithful, and it did something for me to see her go through her struggles and then still have joy in God. Whereas she should have been upset and crying and down, she was up and with joy, and sometimes she would have tears, but she would be happy. And I was like, what's going on? I mean, I know it, we're struggling, but she would have joy. And I thank God for joy, and how that even in the midst of a struggle, you can have joy. Happiness is about what's happening. And so when you're having a good time, things are going well, you can be happy. But joy is so much better than happiness, because things can look bad, feel bad, and things say that you should be sad, but joy can overtake you and say, hey, in spite of what you're going through, be glad and rejoice. And I appreciate seeing that as a child in my mother's home. And as we get ready to close, I would say that it is very important to, whether you are a single parent or not, to bring up your child in the way of God. And to keep God in front of the children. And another thing is, like you were saying about their grandmother, Mother Jackson, and how she was such a positive influence, and the environment they were in her presence. When, as a single parent, you have to leave your children somewhere, you need to be particular about where and who. Where you're going to leave them and who you're going to leave them with. That's another thing I appreciate about my mom, is that she didn't let us go everywhere. Like even some of our relatives, we couldn't go to their house without her. If we went, she was going to be with us. We couldn't just spend the night at everybody's house. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
And so there were certain relatives that if they were going to enforce her parenting style, we could go there. But if they weren't, and she felt like they weren't, then she wouldn't let us. She wouldn't let us. And so I think that's a key component to single parenting too, because you need people. You need like that village, but you can't let everybody be a part of the village. You agree with that?
I do. I did not allow my children to go where their friends were going places or stay with certain people. They stayed with the village. And they are blessed for it.
Yes. And so one of the other things I like the audience to know is that you can make it. You can make it. You can make it as a single parent. And there's different reasons why you may end up being a single parent, but all hope is not lost.
No.
All hope is not lost. You agree?
I do. I do.
Your education, you can still get it. You just have to be more strategic. And you need help. Just seek out the right help and the right counsel. Bring godly counsel into your life. Because you're going to need some godly release. You're going to need some godly support. You're going to need God to help you to think. You need to pray and ask God to help my mind to think and my heart to believe. And help me not to lean to my own understanding, but direct my path. And so, and in doing that, we have to trust in the Lord with our heart, and don't lean to what we just think is right. We begin to look and rely to God, rely on Him for direction. And you can make it. You can make it. You can make it. You can raise godly children, even as a single mother or father. but you're going to need God to do it. So you might be single in that you don't have the companion to help you, but look to God.
Yes.
And He's a very present help in the time of trouble.
Amen. Amen.
So I appreciate you sharing your story and part of your life with us. Some of it is not as comfortable as we like for it to be, but that's part of life. Sometimes we have ups and downs, peaks and valleys, and life kind of works that way.
Yes.
But thank you for sharing with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We'd like for you to like, share, and subscribe, and come back to the next podcast where we are growing in grace. God bless you.